Hey everyone, Corbin Hostler back this week, and this week we have a pretty fun deck, I think, to play in Modern. So you remember a few weeks ago I put out a poll on Twitter asking if you wanted me to work on budget humans or budget allies, and it was humans that won, and we came up with a pretty, I think, powerful, even for especially good on a budget, red-white humans deck. But I did want to circle back around to allies because I enjoy playing it. I spent a lot of time playing it in standard sort of before it broke out. The first time around back in Zendikar. And I think it's a pretty fun deck, so we wanted to circle back to it, especially without the budget constraints here. So we'll go ahead and start with the biggest draw that you get when you play a deck like this, and that's the ability to play all these mana sources that make any color you need for free. Ally Encampment is the big one we get for allies. The only other tribe in Modern that has access to something like this is pretty much Slivers because they have Sliver Hive, but this is the one for allies, and it's great. Ally Encampment, you can use it to pounce an ally back to your hand, protect it from removal, or just to rebuy a trigger, which is a pretty real thing. And then Cavern of Souls, you can make any of the colors we need to make it uncounterable as well. And at the same time, both of these still give you mana to cast your collected companies. After that, sort of what you expect, a lot of green and white mana because that's what the bulk of the deck is. And the Razor Ridge Thickets, and then Shockland, Fetchland, Mana Base with little Gavany Township, Horizon Canopy for value. So moving on to the creature aspect of the deck, Expedition Envoy and Hada Freeblade. These are the 8/1 drops that really make the deck go. You'll see a lot of decks, well, sometimes in the past people have played Aether Vial in a deck like this. And while it leads to some explosive starts, it makes your deck far less reliable in the late game. And now that you have access to Collected Company, there's really no reason for the vials. So the only one drops we want are the Hada Freeblades, which you can get very big. The Expedition Envoys are a great start. And then the Path decks also we have interaction. After that, move on to the 2 drops, Kazandu Blademaster. This thing is actually just absurd. It holds the ground so well. You play it, trigger, you have a 2/2 first striking Vigilance guy who's going to get bigger every time you play an ally. And this guy attacks and blocks incredibly well. I mean, this thing is the Tarmogoyf of the deck, right? It becomes 4/4s without much work and will match up with opponents' Tarmogoyfs before too long if they don't have an answer for it immediately. Oran Reef Survivalist, not quite as good given that it's just a 2/2, right? But it does grow big. It's, the curve of any 1 drop and any of these 2 drops and so on. You just start, suddenly it's a 4/4, 5/5, and it gets going pretty big. And unlike something like Merfolk, where the stats are dependent on having other Merfolk in play, these will stay large even if the creatures around them are killed. Of course, this has some, what you would call, not the top decks you want, I guess, is what you would call it, when you just draw this too late in the game, but that's sort of, that's the deck, right? Akun Battlesinger, this thing provides so much punch. It has haste, it's a 1/1, but it gives all of your allies +1/+0 until end of turn, so it attacks as a 2/1 the turn it comes into play, while making all your other guys bigger. And if you ever hit 2 of them at once off a Collected Company, they're both going to trigger twice, and all of a sudden your team's getting +4/0. It's pretty nuts. Dromoka's Command. This is a pretty sweet one. It's a lot of it's a lot of flexibility, and it fits very well in a deck like this. It's already taking advantage of putting counters on your guys. It makes your guys bigger. It fights. It's good removal in that sense, but also sacrificing an enchantment or preventing a burn spell. Those are aspects that come into play. Moving on to the 3 drops, it's pretty varied at the 3 drop spot because they're different. They're better in different situations, and maybe there's a way to cut down as you decide, tailor it to your local meta or anything like that. But I think they all have merit. And Kabira Evangel is a pretty nice one. So sometimes people run more Fire Mantle Mages, which I'm just running the one of in this deck, because they serve the same function in that, giving your guys protection from a color or menace, it helps you break through, and that's why people play either of these. The difference between those two is that if somebody shoots one of your guys with a bolt and you collect a company and you hit a Kabira Evangel, well, now you get to counter that spell because it comes into play and it gives the targeted creature protection from red or abrupt decay or what have you. And that's sort of a nice advantage to it. The Reckless Bushmasters, again, these just give your deck a lot of punch. If you have 4 mana on turn 4, you go Akun Battlesinger into Reckless Bushwhacker, you're attacking for a lot of damage in that turn. And then the Lantern Scouts, again, just more stuff helps you win the creature battles. Life, the stats on it are fine in this deck at least, and the lifelink is pretty relevant. And then, of course, Collected Company ties it all together. It makes the deck tick. Gives you a lot of good starts, a lot of reliability, and a lot of ways to just reload, which is important in a deck like this where you expect to have your first few guys killed. So you'll see as we play out, the goal is you flood the board with allies, you attack, and you have enough card advantage in the sense of the companies and some of these guys getting really big, but then interaction as well with the pass and the Jermoka's command. It's not just a mindless aggro deck. So moving on to the sideboard, Ondu Clerics, whenever it or another ally enters the battlefield, you gain life equal to the number of allies you control. Obviously great against Burn and Zoo as well. And then Rest in Peace, Stony Silent, Ancient Grudge against sort of the generic, when you have access to white mana, you play your Graveyard Hate, you play your Artifact Hate, and in this case we can vary it up a little bit with the Ancient Grudge as well. Then Spellskites for Infect, and it's a good job just saving removal pointed at your guys in those matchups where you want it. Rex Sage, a little more value. Comes in off of a Collecting Company. It's just good against, whatever artifacts or enchantments. It's a nice card that fits. Tuk Tuk Scrapper, this is kind of the spicy one. When it or another ally enters a battlefield under your control, you can destroy an artifact and then deal damage to a player equal to the number of allies you control. So, maybe you just want another Stony Silence or Ancient Grudge, but hey, it's an ally, it's on theme, and it's fun. Gideon, ally of Zendikar, very nice against control decks. Not only does it, it can plus and become its own guy, and you can emblem, that's good for your guys, but this is the only deck in which the second ability is relevant for this particular aspect. It puts an ally into play. So this is super powerful against all the slower decks that want to grind you out, Jund, Jeskai, any sort of hard control deck. It's great at the top end of your curve, and it's just a threat on its own just by pumping out tokens, even if you have nothing else on the field. And then against the Wrath of God decks, we have Return to the Ranks, and this is kind of a solid one here. Say you have 5 mana, you pay 3, get 3 guys back that are converted mana cost 2 or less. So you go get, maybe you have 2 Akum Battle Singers or what have you. But you get to get in for a bunch of damage very quickly off of it. It's just, again, that's kind of protection against the sweeper. So we'll see how this plays out. This deck, I think, is one of those tier 2 decks that can have a good run at a Grand Prix and day 2 easily, and maybe even better. I mean, I've seen pre-Battle for Zendikar this deck go I think 8-1 on the first day of a Grand Prix. So, and that was before, a lot of the upgrades we get in before Collected Company. So, or maybe I think it had Collected Company. Either way, there's upgrades since then. So this definitely has legs in Modern. I'm excited to give it a run here.